Okay, Martin, please introduce yourself.
Well, good afternoon. I'm called Martin Manasseh. I've been telling stories for the last 26 years. And since I'm 81, that means I started when I was 56 or 55 or something. So I was pretty old when I started, but storytelling for me was like an enchantment, a magic door that opened. I just loved it. And I came to discover that when I listened to a lot of stories, the longer the introduction, the more bored I got. So I'm not going to say very much. I'm going to tell them a story, which I think is much more to the point. So there was a king and a queen, and they had a daughter, a princess. And when she was 12, her mother was fatally ill and died, and the king was distraught. He was terribly upset. He'd lost his beautiful queen. He did not want to lose his beautiful princess. And so he instructed that she should be accompanied at all times, day and night. So ladies accompanied her day and night, wherever she was. And they went to the king and they said, "Your Majesty, the princess doesn't speak." "Of course not," he said. "She's grieving for her mother." But it went on for weeks and months. And after a year, the king started to take notice. He sent for the doctors. The doctors came. The doctors went. They found nothing. He sent for the priests. The priests came. The priests went. They found nothing. He sent for the philosophers, for the magicians, anyone he could think of, but nobody could find anything wrong. He gave parties. He threw banquets. He invited the circus people to do their crazy acts, or even the clowns, but nothing worked at all. And there was even a great firework display with the entire court going, "Ooh, ah, how wonderful." The princess took no notice whatsoever. And eventually, there she was, 18 years old, utterly beautiful, totally silent. And the king in desperation said, "Any man who can make my daughter speak can marry her and have half my kingdom. I will give him 3 hours in which to do it. And if he fails, his head will be cut off and stuck on a spike on the palace walls." Well, I ask you, who would go for such a challenge? Would any of you go for such a challenge? You can shake your heads or nod as you please. I would not, definitely. I would not. And they came. They did come. They tried. They failed. And the line of heads on the spikes got longer and longer and longer. And the princess did not speak. Jack was a goat herd. Jack reckoned he was a very fortunate person because under the palace walls there was a field of grass which was perfect. The right sun, the right rain, the right wind. The goats loved it. They produced fabulous milk, and he sold the milk and told stories. He was very popular, and he enjoyed himself enormously. And he would love to go up with the goats to the field, lie in the sun, and he was lying in the sun looking upwards, and there was a lark singing away in the sky. And suddenly an eagle appeared, attacked the lark, and the lark fell down and landed right at Jack's feet, and he picked it up. It wasn't dead. He took it home. He made a little cage out of reeds. He put the lark in the cage, and he looked after that lark carefully. And after a while, it was healed, and it was hopping about, eating, drinking, everything fine, never sang. And then finally, he took it up to the field in the cage, opened the door. The lark hopped out, spread its wings, and flew up into the sky, and it sang, and it sang, and it sang. And Jack had a huge smile on his face. Life was absolutely perfect. What could possibly go wrong? Well, you all know what could go wrong. Heads started to appear on the spikes on the wall. And with the heads came the carrion birds, the birds that eat dead meat, crows and ravens and rooks and buzzards, and they picked at the heads, and they'd drop bits of rotting flesh onto the grass. Sometimes there was an eyeball, and they'd come diving down, as eyeballs were a speciality. And they made an awful noise, and of course, they also made their own messes, and the grass got polluted, and the goats did not like it, and Jack could see his livelihood slipping away, and he searched all over the place for another field, but it was always too dry, too wet, too rocky. Something was always wrong. And then eventually he hit his fist on the table and said to his mother, "I've had enough." And his mother said, "Oh, no, no, Jack, no." She knew just what she was going to say. "Yeah, I'm going to go and make that princess speak." "Oh, Jack, no, no, please don't." But he'd gone. He was off to the palace, banged on the gates. And there were the guards. "Hey, Jack, have you brought the milk?" "Nope, I've come to make the princess speak." "Not you, Jack. We don't want your head up there. Take me to the king." They took him to the king. Well, the king wasn't keen. He knew Jack was popular. He didn't want Jack's head up there, but he couldn't dissuade him. Jack said, "You said anyone can try." And so at last, the king said, "All right." And Jack was shown into a room. And there were 3 chairs, like the points of a triangle. On one sat a beautiful princess. On the second sat an old, old man who had been a servant not only to this king, but the king before him. And he was known because he was completely truthful. He would never, never tell a lie. And he was the witness to see if the princess would speak. And then the 3rd chair was for Jack. "You have 3 hours," said the king. And the door was shut and the door was locked. And for a whole hour, there was complete silence. A 2nd hour, complete silence. Another half hour, complete silence. And then Jack turned to the old man and said, "It seems I have half an hour left to live. Maybe I could tell you a story to pass the time. I'm just here to see if the princess speaks. I'll tell it anyway." 3 men went traveling. There was a carpenter, a tailor, and a holy man. And one day they found themselves in a desolate place. There was no town or village or farm or even a derelict old building. There was nothing. So they had to make a camp. And they collected a great pile of wood to make a big fire to keep themselves safe. And they agreed that they would take watch in turn. First the carpenter, then the tailor, and then the holy man. And so the tailor and the holy man went to sleep, and the carpenter sat by the fire. He was bored. He looked around. There was a pretty good bit of wood on the fire, on the pile. He picked it up and looked at it. He went and got his tools, and he started to carve. And he carved, and he carved, and he carved. He carved the figure of a beautiful young woman. And he'd just about finished when he realized it was time to wake the tailor. So he put the doll back on the pile and woke the tailor. And the tailor came to the fire, and he sat, and he was bored. But he looked around, and what was that on the wood pile? He picked up the doll, and he marveled. What a genius this carpenter was. What a piece of beautiful carving. What could he add to that? He fetched his bag. In his bag, he had chalks for marking the fabrics. He gave that doll skin color, hair color, eye color, lip color. And then he searched among the fragments of fabrics he had left, and he fashioned a dress so beautiful, any princess would have loved it. And he dressed her in that. And then it was time to wake the holy man. So he put the doll back on the pile and woke the holy man. And the holy man came and sat by the fire. And he was not bored. His head was full of holy chants and holy thoughts and holy mantra. And he got cold. He realized that the fire was going out. So he went to the wood pile to get some more wood, and he found the doll. He built a great fire so that he could see it properly. It was so beautiful. He marveled at the craft of the carpenter and the skill of the tailor. What could I add to this, he thought. And he sat there with the doll on his lap, mumbling and thinking about all these things. And he fell asleep. And in the morning he woke up. The sun was shining. He had a bad conscience. He hastily woke the carpenter and the tailor to say sorry. And they weren't looking at him. They were looking over his shoulder. And he looked, and there by the ashes of the fire stood a beautiful young woman. He recognized her at once. It was the doll. He'd brought her to life. There was a tremendous argument. "She's mine," said the carpenter. "It was my idea. I thought of her. She belongs to me." "No, no," said the tailor. "I gave her character. I gave her substance. She belongs to me." "Oh, no, no, no," said the holy man. "I gave her life. She belongs to me." And Jack turned to the old man and said, "You've lived a long time. You must have learned a lot. Which of these 3 should the princess belong to?" "I'm just here to see if the princess speaks," he said. And at that moment, the executioner's footsteps were coming down the corridor. "Oh, well," said Jack, "the question will have to die with me." "Oh, no," said the princess, "please finish the story." The old man fell off his chair. "Well," said Jack, "they argued and they argued and they argued until they were exhausted. And then they turned to look again at the girl they were arguing about, and she'd gone. She wasn't there. They never saw her again. The door swung open. There's the king. "Off with his head." "No, no," said the old man. "Jack, I mean, the princess spoke, Jack has won. And the king did not believe him. Well, he did really, but he didn't. I mean, the king knew this old man never told a lie. But at the same time, in his heart, he could not believe that a goatherd could make his daughter speak. And so, he had a dilemma between head and heart. And there was an uncomfortable conversation, a lot of shouting, a few tears. And eventually he said, okay, I'll tell you what we do. Jack comes back tomorrow and they will have a second go. They locked him up. He didn't go home, they locked him up. And the next day he was brought back to the room, and there, like the four corners of a square, were 4 chairs. The princess in one, 2 more contained the king's chief ministers, and the 4th was for Jack. You have 3 hours, said the king. The door was shut, the door was locked. What happened in the first hour? Silence. Second hour? Silence. Another half hour? Silence. And then Jack turned to the 2 ministers and said, it seems I have half an hour left to live. May I tell you a story to pass the time? We're just here to see if the princess speaks. I'll tell it anyway. 3 men each had something special. One had a jewel. When he looked in that jewel, he could see anywhere in the world. The other had a carpet. When he stood on that carpet, wish and you'll just arrive where you want to be. And the 3rd man had a bottle. And in that bottle was a medicine that would cure any disease, absolutely any disease. And they looked at each other and they said, we are so stupid. Here we are, our clothes are in rags, we have nothing, and yet we have these 3 great gifts. We should use them to make our fortune. Good idea. Find us something with your jewel. And so he searched. He searched all day, he searched all night. And at last he said, I find nothing except there is a city where everybody seems to be in tears. Let's go there. They climbed onto the carpet, they wished, and there they were. They stopped the passers-by. Why are you so sad? It's our king, it's our king. His daughter is fatally ill and nobody can cure her. And he says if anyone can cure her, they can marry her and have half his kingdom. That's what we want, they said. And they rushed off to the palace. The king took one look, he didn't want to let them in. These 3 slightly ragged men with travel stained and no qualifications between them. But they said, you said anyone can try. And he let them in. And the man with the medicine looked at the princess. She was white as a sheet. She was hardly breathing. And he very carefully placed 3 drops of the medicine on her lips. Everyone watched. Suddenly, she seemed to take a deeper breath. And then color came to her cheeks. And she sat up and she said, I feel very well. And everyone cheered. And the king said, you've done it. Well done. Oh, there's 3 of you. Well, sort it out among yourselves. And they all went away. And the 3 men were left arguing over the princess. She's mine, said the man with the jewel. I found her. Nonsense, said the man with the carpet. She's mine. I got you here. And the man with the medicine was laughing. What's the use of finding her or getting here? Without the medicine, you couldn't possibly cure her. She's mine. I brought her back to life. And they argued, and they argued, and they argued. And then Jack turned to the 2 ministers and said, you're the king's wisest ministers. Which of these 3 should the princess belong to? We're just here to see if the princess speaks. And the executioner's footsteps coming down the corridor. Oh, well, said Jack, the question will have to go to the grave with me. Oh, no, said the princess, please finish the story. The ministers' mouths were open. It wasn't a good sign. Well, said Jack, they argued and they argued and they argued until the princess said, excuse me, I don't actually care what my father's promised you. You can have as much wealth and as much gold or silver or jewels as you like, but you don't get me. I want nothing to do with any of you. She left the room. They never saw her again. In comes the king. Off with his head. No, 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 said the ministers. The princess spoke. Jack has won. Did the king believe them? I'll blow my nose while you think about it. He did not. There was another dreadful scene. And finally the king said, all right, Jack will come back for a 3rd time. This time I will be there myself. And Jack was locked up again, brought back the next day, and there, like the points of a pentagon, 5 chairs. The princess, the 2 ministers, the king, and Jack. The king locked the door from the inside. You have 3 hours, he said. 1 hour, complete silence. Second hour, complete silence. Third hour, an hour, next half hour. Let's not go ahead of ourselves. Half an hour, complete silence, and another 15 minutes of complete silence. And then Jack turned to the king and said, Your Majesty, it seems I have 15 minutes left to live. Can I tell you a story to pass the time? And the king didn't even answer. I'll tell it anyway, said Jack. A man and his wife and their servant went on a business trip, and they were successful. It was wonderful. They were on their way home. They had camels, they had horses, they had gold and silver and copper and jewels. They had fine fabrics, they had spices, they had all sorts of things. And they passed through a desolate part of the country, and the bandits attacked. And the wife was thrown from her horse, landed in the bushes, and nobody saw her. And she lay there, very quietly, until there was no more sound. And then she peeped out. It was very dark, but you could just see that there was nothing left at all except the bodies of the two men with their heads cut off. And she sat with her back to a tree, and she cried, and she cried, and she cried. And who knows how long she might have gone on crying for, but a voice above her head said, Listen to that stupid woman. It was an owl. Doesn't she know that all she has to do is to put the head back on the body and weep on the wound, and it'll come back to life? She's ruining her hunting. She's going to get killed by wild animals. She makes that noise. Let's go. And they flew away. Could this be true? She crept about in the dark. She felt a body. She felt a head. She put the head on the body. She wept on the wound, and she felt warmth returning to the body. It was working. She found the other body, the other head. She wept on the wound, and there was warmth returning. Now she could sleep. And she did sleep, and woke up in the sunshine, turned to greet the two men whose lives she'd saved, and she'd put the wrong head on the wrong body. The husband's head on the servant's body said, She belongs to me. You can see I'm the husband. I've got the face of the husband. The servant's head on the husband's body said, No, 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 no. I have the heart of the husband. That is the essence. She belongs to me. And they argued, and they argued, and they argued. And Jack turned to the king. Your Majesty, you are the supreme ruler and the supreme judge. Surely you can tell us, which of these two should have the wife? The king didn't answer. And the executioner's footsteps were coming down the corridor. Oh, well, said Jack, the question will have to die with me. Oh, no, said the princess, please finish the story. And then the king knew. He knew what must have happened every time. And he did feel a bit stupid and very apologetic. And suddenly also, in a curious way, Jack suddenly seemed to be the best possible husband to his daughter. Take her, he said, she's yours. So Jack took the princess by the hand, and they walked down the corridors, out to the front of the palace where the gates were wide open, and they stood there at the top of the steps. And Jack said, What can you see? I can see a city, she said. I can see hills and mountains. I can see forests. I can see the sky. I can see clouds. Is that the sea over there? Jack said, It is not my business to tell you what to do with your life or whom to do it with. My point was to make you start talking so that the heads would stop coming on the walls, my pasture would recover, and my goats would be okay. And I'm going back to my goats. Thank you very much. Goodbye. Just a minute, said the princess. Before you go, how did your third story end? Well, said Jack, you have your own voice now. You make up your own ending. Or so can any of you. Please end the story as you wish. And that is my story. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Very nice story. Very nice story, Martin.
Thank you.
Can I say that I owe this story to a wonderful storyteller in England called Pamela Marr, who is a Jewish storyteller. I haven't heard from her for ages. I think it's about 12 years since I last saw her. But I met her at a festival, and I said, Pamela, I'm still telling the story that you gifted me in 1996 of the princess who doesn't speak. Oh, yes, she said, would I recognize it? I thought it was a lovely question.